Now that you've added Syft Excel Connector to your Excel and signed into your Syft account, you'll have this Syft heading at the top. And when you click on My Account, it should welcome you to Syft. And we're going to just look through some of the features that are available to you within Syft Excel Connector. So you'll first see this option to select an entity. And if you click on that drop-down, it'll show you all the entities that you have connected on Syft. The entity you select here will just be the default entity. So whenever you go and add information using the options over here, which we'll explore a little bit later, this will be the default entity. You can always go and change the entity to something else, either by changing it here, which will change the default entity that's inserted, or by changing your entity selection once you've inserted the information. But we'll see that a bit more when we go and add some information. The next option we have here is options. And if we click on that, you'll see that it takes us to a view where we can select defaults for each of the entities. So here we can go and select each of the entities that we have loaded onto Syft. We can go search for any of the entities that we're interested in. And for each of these entities, we can select the default profit and loss layout, the default balance sheet layout, the default build P&L that we'd like to use, or the build balance sheet along with the four-way forecast that we'd like to use. We can always come back and change this if we'd like to insert different information, but this is just Syft's way of making it easier for you when you input this information. So you don't have to make that selection every time. You can come here and select the ones that you will most often use. Once you're happy with all your defaults, you can then go and start inputting information. If you can't find the entity that you want to work with, you can always click on Reload. And then what that will do is it will go and re-pull the information from Syft and pull any new entities that have perhaps just been created. If we go back to the options, you'll see our next option is Refresh Cells. And if we click on Refresh Cells, this will pull through the information with all the updated selections. So if we were to go through to options again and perhaps change J's P&L to Anne's P&L and then click Refresh Cells, it will update the information that we have here for the new default that we've selected. We could either click Refresh Cells here, or we could click Refresh Cells here and we'll have the same effect. The next option we have is Report Output Format. And if you click on the eye, it'll explain to you what this is. And what this does is it changes the way your Syft data is displayed in Excel. So if we click on it, you'll see it takes us to a view where we can choose to either have a dynamic report or a paste as values report. And then finally, we have some formatting options. So let's go and look at the difference between these two. So I'm going to start by just inputting a profit and loss on the dynamic report basis. And if I click on profit and loss, you'll see it will pull through the information. And now it's pulled through the information from Syft. If I click on the information, you'll note that there's this block around it and there's a formula in the cell. And that's because the dynamic report inserts reports using a ranged array. So basically it will re-pull through the information and put all the new information in a block. This is very useful if you want to go and input a report which is perhaps slightly shorter or longer. So if we go to Ace Dress Shop, we'll notice that now this report is shorter, but it deleted the whole old report and inputted a new report. So it will replace anything that was there before. There is, however, a downside in it replacing everything is that the rows will change. So if the report is longer or shorter, if a different entity's report is longer or shorter in the next period, when you refresh this information, the rows will no longer be the same. And so we have another option, and we can go click on Paste as Values and go and input exactly the same profit and loss. And now when we pull the information, you'll note that it presents slightly differently. When I click on it, it no longer has the square, and that's because Syft has gone and value pasted the information here. But if I now were to go change this to Ace Dress Shop, we'll note it goes to cell 32 and it's going to update, and you'll see it still goes to cell 32, but your net profit's actually sitting here. So all of this here is information that's still residual from the previous report that was there, J's Cupcake Company, and this is actually the new report that we want. So if you're planning on creating a template and you want to change entities, or your report is likely to change the number of rows, I suggest that you use a dynamic report. But if you want to build off this easier, it's better to use as paste as values, as the rows won't change each period and you don't have this outer block that's kind of protecting the information. The final piece of information we have here is formatting, and this turns text, numbers, and percent formatting on. So when you are looking at the dynamic report, and remember this was a dynamic report that we inserted, if we toggle formatting on and we say refresh cells, you'll see the information will be busy. And now Syft will change this variance column from decimals to a percentage. This might not apply to the value pasting method because Syft has just gone and value pasted the information there. And so those cells are value pasted and Syft cannot recognize to change the formatting. So those are the different options you have in report output format. The next option we have is to refresh data in Syft. So if we click on I, it says it'll sync your newest financial data from your accounting provider into Syft. So if you're using one of the accounting software, say Xero, QuickBooks, or Sage, and you want to go and pull through an adjustment or a transaction that's happened on the accounting software that hasn't yet pulled through to here, you can go click refresh data in Syft. And this will then go and trigger Syft to go and trigger a refresh of the data in your underlying accounting software. So it's quite handy. You don't even have to go onto Syft to refresh the data. You can just click here. The next option is upload TB data to Syft. And with this option, you're able to go and upload Excel trial balances to any of the Excel entities that you have on Syft. If you're interested in this, you can go and look at the separate video where we explore how to do this. We then can just go and click on Go to Syft Analytics, and this will take you to the site. And finally, if you click on My Account, it will take you some of the details of your account. So those are all the options within My Account. Next, let's look at some of the things we can import into Syft. So you'll see we have several different headings: financials, contacts, analyze, and four-way forecast, along with utilities. And under each of these, if you click on the drop-down, you'll see a list of all the items that you can import into your Excel connector. Now, these will mirror things that you are familiar with on Syft Analytics. So you can do the profit and loss, balance sheet, trial balance, cash flow on the direct or indirect method, and this statement of changes in equity. And we're able to just click on any of these that we're interested in, say cash flow direct, and you'll see that Syft will pull through the information. We're then able to go and change the entity that we're looking at. We can also change the method on which we view it. So whether it's monthly, quarterly, or weekly. We can also go and change the date. So we could go make this 2021 instead, and you'll see it will refresh and re-pull the information. We can also choose if we want a standard or multi-period report. And for the profit and loss and balance sheet, you can also select a build P&L. So here we had a profit and loss, and you'll note that we also have this build P&L option. We can also then go and add contact information. So let's go to a new tab, and we can add receivables or payable information. So this will give you a list of who owes you or who you owe. Under Analyze, we could also input sales by customer, sales by product, or even a transaction list. I'll just input sales by customer so that you can see it over here. And then under four-way forecast, you'll see we could input each of the aspects of the four-way forecast. And so we could build out a spreadsheet which has one of these elements on several different tabs, or all of these elements on one tab. Next, we have this utilities option. And you'll see if I click on utilities and click over here, it'll input this entity selector option we have here. And so this looks exactly the same as what we have here, but it's quite powerful because if I were to go and put it over the standard entity selector that comes with any of the templates we input. So for example, I go click there, you'll see it will now overlay this, and so it will refresh the information. In this case, because we have the same entity selected, nothing will change. But what's happened here is if you go and build out a template, say you want a profit and loss, a balance sheet, a cash flow statement, and you want a multi-period or a standard version, you can go and build out a template in Excel. But then often when you share this with someone else, if they don't have the same list of entities as you, the template might not work. So the Excel connector might not know what entities to pull because you don't have the same entities that they do. But if you go and overlay the standard entity connector that comes through when you input the information with this utilities, what it does is it changes it from looking for your specific entities on Syft to looking for any entities that any user has. So you can then share this template with somebody else in your team, and they'll be able to go and replicate this template with any entities that they have on Syft. So this tool here is quite useful because it helps make your templates more transferable. So there you have all the tools. Obviously, we can go and explore why you might want to include some of these and why it's useful to include them with the Excel connector. Remember, once you've inputted this information, you can always just go and change the date or change the entity or change the basis on which you want to view it, or go and refresh the cells or refresh the information from your underlying accounting software, and whatever template you've built out already will automatically update with the information that's on Syft. And so that is the power of the Excel connector.